All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a pretty radical idea today. What if everything we thought we knew about the maps of the ancient world is just plain wrong? We're going to see how a mysterious, lost book and an absolutely stunning discovery are pushing some people to completely redraw the lines of history.
So just imagine this for a second. There's this ancient book, right? It's packed with wild prophecies, incredible visions of fallen angels, and it was a huge deal for early Christians and Jews for centuries. But then, poof, it gets left out of the Bible. Why? Well, that's the mystery we're getting into today. It's a story that kicks off with this forgotten text and takes us on a search for truth that literally spans the entire globe.
Okay, so first things first, let's talk about this mysterious ancient book. We need to get to know the lost narrative that's right at the heart of this entire quest.
It's called the Book of Enoch, and tradition says it was written by Enoch himself, who, if you remember from Genesis, was Noah's great-grandfather, the guy who supposedly walked with God. It's what you'd call an apocalyptic text, which just means it's filled with these incredible divine revelations, prophecies about the heavens, angels, and, the end of the world.
And this is where things get really interesting. See, for most of Christianity and Judaism, this book is a no-go. It's not part of the official scripture. And the thinking is, it's probably because the stories in it, about rebellious angels and these crazy heavenly journeys, were just, well, a little too out there, too controversial. But get this, for some Orthodox churches in Ethiopia and Eritrea, it's not just accepted, it's an absolutely essential sacred text. That massive disagreement is a huge part of what makes this book so fascinating. So for centuries, this text was basically just lore, kept alive in a handful of traditions. But then, in the 20th century, everything changed. That's when archaeologists literally found tangible traces of it, right there in the sand. Our story now takes us right here, to the Qumran Caves. It's this rugged, dry landscape right near the Dead Sea. And it's in this exact spot that pieces of this ancient puzzle were pulled right out of the dust of history. So, you've probably heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? One of the biggest archaeological finds ever. Well, buried among them, archaeologists found several fragmented copies of the Book of Enoch, written in Aramaic. This was a huge deal. It was real, physical proof that this text was ancient and that Jewish communities were actively reading and copying it 2,000 years ago. And this find wasn't just some random thing. When you look at the Qumran settlement itself, from the actual dig sites where people lived to the beautiful, intricate mosaics they left behind, you see a community that was deeply, deeply invested in protecting its sacred writings. It's a place where faith and history are literally layered on top of each other in the dirt.
Now, finding these ancient fragments, that's just where our story begins. The source material we're looking at today comes from a modern group called the God Culture, and they use these texts as a launching pad to do something pretty radical: re-examine geography itself.
This is it. This is the big, bold claim that these modern researchers are making. It's a direct shot at centuries of accepted biblical geography. They're saying a key location was never where we thought it was, and if that's true, well then our maps are fundamentally broken.
So what these authors believe is that if they carefully, meticulously look at old historical maps, they can actually peel back the layers of what we think is history and uncover a hidden truth. A truth about where ancient tribes really lived, which they believe changes the entire story of biblical prophecy.
Okay, so take a look at these two map details. The source presents these as clues. On the left, see how that region labeled Dan seems to stretch into what we've always thought of as Judea? And on the right, this other ancient map shows a completely different border for the territory of Judah. The argument here is that these aren't just mistakes by some old mapmaker. They're echoes of a geographical truth we've lost.
And believe me, this search for clues doesn't just hang around the Middle East. Oh no, it goes completely global. I mean, the connections they're making are, well, they're pretty bold. They link the biblical land of Ophir, where King Solomon got all his gold, not to Africa or Asia, but to ancient North America. And they don't stop there. They even pinpoint a key prophetic spot on Mindanao Island in the Philippines. It's a quest that doesn't just tweak the map, it completely tears it up and starts over.
So all of this raises a pretty big question. Why? Why go on this massive world-spanning project to remap everything? The answer, according to them, isn't about history or academics, it's about prophecy.
Yeah, this whole geographical deep dive is presented as a divine mission. The authors genuinely believe they're fulfilling a spiritual calling, a purpose that was laid out in ancient prophecies, including clues they believe they've found in the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves.
These phrases, taken right from their research, really tell you everything you need to know about their motivation. They see themselves as modern-day sons of light, and they believe they have a divine task to prepare the way in the wilderness and to give light. For them, getting these ancient locations right isn't just an interesting puzzle, it's a critical step to fulfilling that prophecy.
Okay, let's wrap this up. What does it all really mean? We've gone from a mysterious ancient text all the way to a modern, globe-trotting investigation that's driven entirely by a belief in prophecy.
And it's so important to remember that this entire idea, this very specific way of reading maps and prophecy, is coming from that modern group we talked about, the God culture. They're the ones publishing this research, and they're the ones weaving the Book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and all these ancient maps into one single story for today.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. This whole thing is a really powerful reminder that our understanding of the past is never set in stone. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much does the map of the world that we just accept as fact actually define the stories we tell about our history, our faith, and, in the end, ourselves?